Then, let's call the meeting to order. First thing, approval of our minutes from the last meeting. Do we have any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting?
I move to approve.
Second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's carried. Any opposed? Okay. Any conflicts of interest? None, then we'll move forward. The American Potash bond issue.
I think we need to go into executive session for that. That will take a motion. This is Rick Zeiss from the Attorney General's office.
This is Frank Thorwald.
I move that we go into...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Frank.
I move we go into executive session. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're in executive session.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. This is Rick Zeiss from the Attorney General's office. I think we have tied up the loose ends to where we are not going to have to file a lawsuit. And I'll start by saying my recommendation is to make the payment to Carlson, but let me explain why. There were a group of different parties who had possible claims. The first, I'll just go down the list really quickly, was Prospect Global Resources. They were a Delaware corporation. They are currently suspended for failing to pay their taxes. I also spoke with their last employee, a gentleman by the name of Greg Diggler, who indicated they're a shell, that there is nothing left, and the officers of that corporation are going to just allow it to dissolve by operation of law in Delaware. So, and they are not licensed to be a corporation in Arizona. It would take a lot of effort to bring them back up to make a possible claim. The next is American West Potash. Carlson Group's already foreclosed on both the leases and on their personal assets. My recommendation, at least to them, is that they don't have a claim anymore. The last one, and the real key, was Patrick Avery. We found Patrick Avery. We have in writing his waiver of all right, title, and interest, any claim to that bond. And I believe that will take care of possible claimants on the $50,000 bond. And at this time, my recommendation is to pay the $50,000 bond to the Carlson Group. Now, and that's issue one. Issue two is how to, if in fact that is something we can all agree to, is can we do that by a wire, or do we have to do that by check? And that's something Niall may have to address. And beyond that, is there any discussion?
Is there any downside if we approve it? What are the risks?
There's some minimal risk of either American West Potash be revived as a corporation. I just don't see it. It would cost them probably $15,000 to $20,000 in attorney's fees, on top of having to pay the monies to the state to reactivate it. And reactivating it, they still have no assets. And so American West Potash, I just don't see being reactivated just for the purpose of making a claim. And as to Prospect Global Resources, same thing. It's going to take paying taxes and making all the payments to Delaware, which will require retention of an attorney. You're probably looking at $10,000 to $15,000 of attorney's fees and costs on top of it. A lot of money to chase $50,000 when you have just a very questionable claim at this point to that $50,000 from what we know today. And Patrick Avery was the real trigger to me because of his role. And when I found him, he was more than happy to waive his rights underneath it, under it, and he actually did it in writing in a letter.
Rick, can you share that with us, or you'll be sending us those waivers?
I will be more than happy to send a copy of the written waiver.
This is Dale. As you know, I've been missing meetings, so I'm not up to date on the what's going to happen with that bond. If you transfer it to that company, will that also require that they do any plugging and abandoning that the bond was intended for?
Dale, this is Rick Zives from the Attorney General's office, and Niall can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe each of the 14 wells has been closed pursuant to statute, and so the issue, the basis of the bond has been resolved because the test wells have already been closed. So we are actually returning the $50,000 bond to them, not transferring, not transferring rights of that bond onto other wells.
I see. So being closed, you mean plugged and abandoned appropriately, right?
Dale, this is Niall. According to Steve Rousey, that's the situation, right? That he had gotten the closure done and all these. He'd seen the reclamation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a little confused about closure. Plugged
and abandoned. Let me use some industry terms.
That's a technical term, yeah. We want to be sure that they did that rather than just close a file or something. Okay?
Good inquiry. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
This is Steve Cooper. Just one question. If we return the bond, should we consider having some type of an indemnity agreement in the event there is a claim made on it later?
I didn't ask that of Carlson Group. I can't ask them. At this point, I'm not, given where we are, I'm not sure they'll be willing to give it today. I do apologize for that.
Okay.
Would you like me to make that inquiry?
Well, I guess we could, but I would hate to dig my heels in on that one, given the fact that we've got it close to resolution, and we could probably name the competing claims, the other parties that are there. That way, if it ever, if it's some third party out there, obviously nobody's aware of it, but the three claimants that we've spoken about, I don't think that's unreasonable to ask for that type of indemnity, given their assertion that it's theirs.
Okay. I can do that.
So, gentlemen, do we want to go ahead and give them their money with some kind of proviso that we ask for an indemnity agreement, but if they don't give it, that we're willing to move forward? What's your thoughts?
This is Steve Cooper. My suggestion would be to instruct Mr. Zives to resolve the bond issue pursuant to the direction in the executive session. Mr. Zives, do you think that would work for you?
I think that will work fine, Mr. Cooper.
Do you want to make that into do we do it a motion at this point?
I think you have to go back.
In regular.
Back in regular session to do that. Any other discussion then before we go back into regular session? Motion to go back in. Go ahead.
I'll
Dave.
move that we go back into regular session.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Someone got cut off.
Is everybody in favor of that going back into regular session?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any opposed? No. We're in regular session. Steve, shall we, is there any motions on how to deal with the issue?
This is Stephen Cooper. I would make a motion that we direct Mr. Zives in the Arizona Attorney General's office to resolve the bond claim of the Carlson Group per direction given in executive session.
This is Frank Thorwald, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Steve?
Yes, I voted. Yeah, I voted aye.
Okay. Any opposed? None. The ayes have it. It's passed.
Thank you.
The report from the state geologist about administrative budget and legislative matters.
This is Chris Hansen, Deputy Director of the Arizona Geological Survey. Regarding the pending transfer of the Arizona Geological Survey to the University of Arizona, the discussions that I reported on last meeting are still ongoing between the university and the governor's office. Our understanding is that the university has drafted a plan on an approach on how they would absorb us and how they would fit us into their organization. But those discussions have been largely between the university and the governor's office, and our understanding is that they'll bring us back into the discussions very shortly, and that it is progressing well, and that both sides are agreeing on the general approach. So we're just in a little bit of a holding pattern at the moment while that's ongoing, but we do hope to hear very soon, as what they had told us, that they would let us know any day now on what the plan is and what we need to do to move forward. Any questions? I can cover the legislative updates next, but just want to make sure there's any questions on that before I move on.
I have a question about the transfer over into DEQ of the commission. What's the status on that? This is Frank Thorwald.
Right. We do not have any further update on that. That was part of the governor's proposed budget, and that should be moving through the legislature for their input very shortly, either this week or next week is when they're going to start to tackle the budget, and that is part of that. That was a recommendation in the governor's budget, along with moving us to the university. It was also suggested by the governor's office in their budget to move the Oil and Gas Commission to the DEQ. So that's basically the answer. The short answer is that's still pending the legislature's review of and approval of the governor's budget and recommendations.
Any other questions before he goes on to the legislative?
This is Dale. I've got a lot of questions relative to the impact of these transfers, but it's irrelevant because we aren't being asked. So,
Dale, why don't you bring them up anyway? I think your comments are always exceptionally good.
well, yeah, of course, our statutes require that we provide not only service to the public, but also ready access to the files, the library, that is readily done when the survey is physically separate from the university. But I'm concerned if we are merged with the university, how do we maintain that requirement that we be available to the public? I'm sure that they're talking about that, but I've not heard anything about it. And the library, which takes up quite a bit of space in the current Arizona Geological Survey building, would have to be made available to the public. And the university library, of course, you can say, well, it is a public library, but you can't just walk in off the street, and access the files in there or documents. So those are things that I think are being overlooked by this transfer, and I think that the lack of also how well will the Oil and Gas Commission function under the direction of ADEQ. So we certainly need to have some independence from any other agency, because we have to function to meet our statutes. Now, obviously, the legislature could change statutes. I don't know if that's in the process. Does anybody know?
I do not know.
I don't.
This is Chris Hansen. Just to I do not know for sure. I haven't seen any legislation so far, but we do know that to allow for the transition of the Geological Survey to the university would require some legislation to change the statutes to make that happen. And at the same time, our assumption is that it would also require some legislation to have the move of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to ADEQ as well. So our assumption, we have no information, we haven't been part of any discussions, but just our assumption is that those two pieces of legislation will need to go hand in hand to move forward on those two recommendations.
Yeah, because
we haven't seen neither. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we would certainly be in violation of our rules and statutes unless they were changed with this new arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. It would require those two pieces of legislation.
Also, another question, would the staff, the Geological Survey staff, remain intact, or is that going to be reduced under this current plan?
That's all under discussions. I guess technically what the proposal is to what stands so far in the governor's budget proposal is to transfer the duties and mission of the Arizona Geological Survey to the university. It does not speak of staff or assets in particular. And that's what's going on now, discussions. Lee Allison, our director, has been in conversations with the university, and then the university is putting together their plan, discussing that with the governor's office to answer those questions on how the assets and personnel would be transferred. So until we hear further, we're still a little bit in the dark, just waiting to hear back on what those plans are.
Yeah, I realize that. I understand that. I realize that it's premature for me to get an answer on anything like that. But those are questions that we should be asking.
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dale. Any other thoughts you have on that before we move on?
Oh, I think that pretty much contains. I guess the legislation that's going through the legislature right now extends the Oil and Gas Commission for 8 years.
That's been passed.
Apparently
that's been passed in both houses. At this
it has, huh?
But it was not for 8 years. It was for 6 years, I think.
It was amended to 6.
So it matches ADEQ's sunset statute also. So they both would sunset at the same time.
Yeah, so but it has been approved, and so at least we're not being eliminated and replaced by one administrator. So, okay. I think that's
Niall and I were both hearings, committee hearings.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for doing that. We needed that support. Yeah. Okay, well, that's about all I have then, and those are questions that are certainly we need to keep asking. Yep.
Anything else, Chris?
No, I can just give just to finish up on the legislation, regarding Senate Bill 1059, which was the one going through the legislature now to extend the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. Just as a quick recap, it did pass the Senate 30-0 on February 8th. Went through the House in Energy and Environmental Natural Resources Committee on the 22nd, 9-0. It's over to the House side. The House Rules Committee actually is going to be reviewing that today at 1 o'clock, which is expected to be just a formal procedure before it goes to a floor vote for the House, and then we expect that to go through quickly. Just a quick update on HB 2613 regarding licensing geologists. Actually, the bill would remove the requirement for geologists to be licensed. That bill passed the House floor on March 3rd along party lines 31-20 vote. It was approved with a floor amendment that would actually keep the registration for geologists intact. Contrary to the original bill, which might have removed it, this would put geologists back in along with landscape architects, still allowing for licensure. But it would add the clause that a geologist may engage in a geologic practice without being registered, which we're still debating on what that exactly means. It's pretty close to status quo, but it might open up, at least clarify that you do not need to be a licensed or registered geologist to go into private practice. But it does allow for registration to take place.
Will that define what is required to be a professional, I don't mean licensed, but a truly professional geologist?
Well, I think that resides in the Arizona Board of Registration that oversees the requirements and sets out the requirements for that. That is not specified in the legislation, in the bill.
Yeah,
only not.
But if the geologist is not required to be registered, then those stipulations in the Board of Technical Registration are not applicable. They have to define what a geologist is somewhere.
Right. Yeah, they describe that generally in the bill, but not into great detail, which would be the. We're assuming that would stay the same. The current requirements would stay the same.
Like if somebody says, I'm a geologist, is that all it requires?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm being facetious now, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
So that did pass the House, and that was transmitted over to the Senate. So now it'll go through the Senate committee process, and we'll keep you apprised of that. And just the final bill, just very quickly, the fracking prohibition bill, HB 2407. That is officially dead. The deadline for bills to pass through the Committee of Origin had passed 2 weeks ago, and this one went nowhere, was never assigned to a committee. So the fracking bill is officially dead for this session as well.
Okay.
And that concludes my legislative report and the report of the director's report for AZGS. Unless there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to address.
Hey, Chris,
Thank you very much.
I got one quick question. This is Joe Dixon with the State Land Department. On the bill there for the extension of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission 1059, is that going to have to go back to the Senate now since it was amended by the House?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Because it was amended, so that it'll have to go through. It'll have to go back. Well, no, I'm sorry. It was originally a Senate bill, so it passed the Senate. It was amended in the Senate. So when it goes to the House, if they pass it as is without any further amendment, then it would go to the governor's office. Since it was amended by the Senate, which was the House of Origin.
Oh, okay. I thought it was amended in the House.
I did too. I was thinking the House
Yeah.
as well. Frank Thorwald here.
Okay, I can double check that and let you know. Then I would. Do not have that note right in front of me.
Any other discussion before we move on? Report of Oil and Gas Administrator about new permits and drilling activity.
This is Niall. Got two things to report. I had a call from Carmen Bonanno last week, Wednesday. Blackstone is drilling the Rocking Chair Ranch #1, and they were the next day going to be setting casing. I don't see any video of that. Additionally, second item, there's the mechanical integrity test and rework of the Bumstead #3, the Roach and Baker well out at the Plains Midstream LPG storage facility, and I witnessed part of the MIT test this weekend, and that was being conducted in a reasonable fashion. And I'll write a brief note for the permit folder on that. That's all I've got.
Niall?
Yeah, Dale.
This is Dale. Niall, are you comfortable with doing those inspections? And are we concerned about any training that you might need for that, or what's happening with that? I'm out of the loop so far on that.
Certainly, there's a fair amount of well engineering, reservoir engineering, that and calculations that goes into being sure that it's all being done properly. So that's why it was probably good to observe the actual nitrogen charging of the cavern and see some of the logging of the well. I don't know if that totally addresses your question, but when we get the actual sundry notices of the MIT, if you like, we can review those together.
I missed the last comment. What'd you say?
If you like, when I get those filings, the sundry notices for the MIT test, I'll be glad to go over those with you.
Oh, well, I'm not qualified either. I mean, I shouldn't say either. I shouldn't say either. But what I'm concerned about is the technicalities of the inspections and how do we know if they're doing things right and so on. And I know that you're a very good scientist, but I'm wondering if there are any special training activities that might be desirable here. I contacted the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission right after Steve Rousey retired and asked them if they have any training programs like they used to run for inspectors, and they don't do that anymore. I talked to Lee about it, and he thought, well, maybe you could, he has contacts in the industry, and that he thought maybe you could go and observe what they do. So I'm not questioning you, Niall, or what your competence is. I'm just saying this is something.
No, I understand there's a concern there. Chris, do we want to discuss the training that we had planned?
Sure. If you want to review that, that would be fine.
Oh, good. See, I didn't know about that. I don't know anything about that. Mm-hmm.
We've contacted some of the folks in similar positions up in the state of Utah, and have, I think because of some of the legislative matters that are ongoing, not progressed as aggressively as we might have otherwise in arranging to do some ghosting and training. Chris, do you have any sense on where our position is on that?
No, I think as you mentioned, we just reached out and had that opportunity. That agreement that's there. It was just with the transfer to U of A and the legislation going through, we just kind of put that on hold right now until we figure out what's the timing of what's happening. But we basically have that opportunity in hand. We're just a temporary hold while we're sorting out the other logistical issues regarding transfer of the organizations.
Well, good. That satisfies me. That's what I was concerned about, because, see, I'm not aware of any of that. So, anyway, thanks for that.
Frank Thorwald here. Dale, on a personal note, it's nice to have you back on the phone, at least.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It's been almost 4 weeks. 8 weeks since I had my surgery, and I'm doing really well. So, thanks for your concern.
Good. Yeah. Any other discussion before we move on to the call to the public? Then a call to the public. Anybody that wants to make any comments?
This is Rick Porter, and I'm with
So everybody can hear you.
Yeah, come on up.
Ranger Development. And Dale, I came down and showed you kind of what our plan of operation is in Northeast Arizona, and I've also, over the weekend, I think Niall has received by PDF from email on 2 applications to drill that will be coming through to Kendra, I believe, today by Federal Express. So we'll be ready to present 2 applications to the Oil and Gas Commission for approval. And we plan on trying to get our helium drilling program going by early April sometime. And we're also doing a seismic program that we've got some archaeological work that has been presented to Joe Dixon, who will forward that on. We're and doing a seismic program at the same time. So I just wanted to come today since Niall was nice enough to send me the agenda for the meeting to let you know what we were planning on getting in front of the commission very shortly. So we're ready to present whenever.
So you'll make a presentation on that in the next meeting, I presume?
Yes, we would plan on it. I think your next meeting is actually scheduled for in May, and we would like to probably try to push that forward somehow and get these in front of the commission by a special meeting, hopefully.
Frank, what do you think about that? Could we do a special meeting for that purpose?
Why not? We've done 2 of them just in the last few months.
Yeah, and it works very nicely. We do it by telephone. We don't have to travel on those interstates.
Dale,
but
I would
obviously the presentation can't be by telephone. We'd have to see it. Yeah.
Well, one thing I think we could do is we could take advantage of the GoToMeeting computer aspect, and if Rick's going to make a PowerPoint presentation, we'd be able to do that remotely as well, so everyone could see it.
Oh, that's a good. Sure, why not?
Yeah, we definitely would be able to do that. And Dale, our presentation to the people here would be basically the same slides as we were able to show to you, Kurt and I. And Kurt would be with me to come make that presentation to the commission.
Good, yeah.
But we're excited to start doing some business here again. So.
Dale, Steve, just so you know, this is Frank Thorwald again. Niall and I have been trying to work out times when I could go out and with him to some of the sites, and so I can become more familiar with some of these things that are going on. We tried to do something on Saturday, but I got tied up on some other issues, and as things have needed to be signed or something, I've been meeting with Niall or the AG's office to do that. So I just wanted you to be aware that I'm trying to stay on top of things until you can get back here,
I'm
Dale.
sure you are. Yeah. Well, no, Frank, you're doing really well. Don't count on. Don't. I'm not expecting to come back as chair. So, I've done that long enough, I think. So you guys are doing really well, and I hope to continue on the commission, but I have no clue if I will or not. So, no, you're doing fine. Don't expect me to come back. Expect to be chair. So, okay.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. Is there any other calls to any other body in the public that wishes to speak?
I got it real quick. This is Joe Dixon with the State Land Department again, too. If they wanted to have a special meeting, and I know we're talking about a next regular meeting in May. I mean, we'd always been doing, January, April, July, October. If you want to do a special meeting, maybe do one in April and get back to the regular date or something. It doesn't matter to me.
Dale, Steve, any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand that. What was it?
Yeah, sorry. This Joe Dixon with the State Land Department. I was saying if they wanted to, talking about having a special meeting maybe in April. Normally the regular meeting dates were always January, April, July, and October, I think it was. And I think somebody mentioned the next regular meeting was scheduled for May. Maybe do a special meeting in April and get back to the old schedule or something like that. Is that something to think about?
This is Niall. Rick, can you come back and tell us when you might like to make that presentation? What do you think? Pin your time frame down a little closer if you could at this time.
Time frame is kind of on your schedule a little bit when you've processed through the applications and are ready for us to present.
Okay.
I think you need to probably process what we've sent in and know exactly if there's any questions from
So you're ready to go at any time, you're saying?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
We're ready, and I actually was on the phone this morning with Kurt, and he said, it could be, he had one day open this week, he was open next week, and in April, we're available, and we're looking forward to it. And back to Frank's wanting to get out in the field and see some operations and things like that, we definitely welcome whoever to come out and see our operation when we get going up there. So,
That helped.
We have had meetings. We have had meetings in the past in the field. Now that that increases the cost for everybody to travel there, but that's always a possibility to meet, on site. Not that it's necessary, but it might be desirable sometime.
The one thing I had brought up, Dale, this is Rick again, was that our operation is it's not a long operation. It takes about 3 or 4 days for us to drill our well out there, and you're going to be able to see a lot within about 100 or 200 feet. It goes really fairly fast, and you actually get to see us when we're drilling with air, actually see us cut the formation out there, see when we get into the coconino and things like that. That is real interesting if somebody really wants to see a small drilling operation. It's not a large drilling operation, but you get to see what's going on real quickly.
Gentlemen, this is Frank Thorwald. What about having a meeting on either April 8th, 22nd, or 29th? Would that work for either one, for everyone?
Yeah, I think so. Those are days. What days of the week are those?
Those are Friday, all Fridays.
All Fridays. Right. We normally, our tradition is every third Friday of the month.
That would be the 22nd.
So that I would suggest that.
Steve, does that work for you?
I can make it work.
Okay. Then
And
let's-
that's going to be a special meeting? Or are we going to replace the proposed May 15th meeting with that one?
Why don't we replace the proposed May 15th meeting with that one? Do we need a motion on that?
Can the public have a comment?
I think we're doing this to accommodate
we
you,
are in the public.
so feel free to speak
No,
up.
I just wanted, the earlier the better if we could do it, is the only thing. We're looking to contract a rig and timing.
Yeah, well, there's really no need to postpone it. So I think considering and I don't know if I should say this, but I think it's an excellent project. And I would like to try to accommodate Rick and his company as much as we can. So I'm all for trying to meet sooner than the 22nd.
The 8th? I think he likes the 8th.
I like the 8th. My group will like the 8th.
Steve, does that work for you?
It will work.
And we can still call it a regular meeting. We don't have to, stick to the 3-month schedule. We could just say that, all right, we're meeting in April. That's our regular quarterly meeting. How about that?
That works for me. That's Frank.
Yeah, now that gives us plenty of time to do anything that you see as a deficiency in the application, that type of thing. We've got plenty of time.
Yeah, that gives us plenty of time to
3
meet
weeks
and
to be able to get anything
go over the
done
permit,
between us.
the drill permit. Sounds good. So should we make a motion to these changes?
Yes. This is Frank Thorwald. I make a motion that we change our May meeting to our regular meeting being April 8th at 10 a.m.
Second.
All in favor? Signify by aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next regular meeting will be April 8th. Any other, go ahead.
In the State Land Department?
I think that's a tradition we ought to continue. This works out very well, I think, for most of us.
Might be our last one here.
Okay.
It may be. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to make a statement?
This is Chris Hansen. Just very quickly, just a clarification on Senate Bill 1059, extending the oil and Gas Conservation Commission. It was amended on the House side, so it will have to go back to the Senate to be re-voted over there. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Is there anything else before we go to announcements? Announcements. Is there any announcements? Since there's no announcements, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any, any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Dale?